Screen.
Hey, Tam. Hello, hello. We got some
Hello.
folks coming in. Awesome. Hello, everyone. We're going to get started in a few minutes. Please introduce yourself into the chat. Thank you for joining us at University of Miami. Fantastic. Thank you, Heidi. What we got? Texas Health Resources. Very cool. Auburn University. David Woodley. Yes. Good to see you. Good to see you. Wonderful. All right, we are going to get started just maybe 2 minutes after. So let some folks come on in. Nate, you always post those great questions to the LinkedIn board. You always have those interesting ones. Always fun. Awesome, Nebraska. Got some Berkeley folks coming in. Central State, awesome. Wisconsin, what part of Wisconsin? Let's see. Excellent. I love my Wisconsin. It's a yearly road trip. We go to Wisconsin. Awesome. Welcome, welcome. For those just joining, we're going to get started just in another minute or so.
Is my microphone working?
It is.
Okay.
Kathy, good to see
Awesome.
you. Good to see
Sorry
you.
to stress you out, Ron.
Oh, no, it's all good. It's all good. I'm so glad you're able to join us. This is going to be wonderful. Tons and tons of experience on this call within the panelists. So this is very, very cool. We have some serious geographic coverage here. Austin, nice, nice, nice. University of Colorado. I think that's in Boulder, right? What an amazing town. All right, I think we could get started. Yes, Denver, very, very cool. It's an amazing school. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We have a wonderful session planned for today. It is aptly named. Thank you, Tam, for the creativity to be or not to be a Tableau data source. This is a rich topic that I think is probably the most important in anyone's Tableau journey. The design, the structure, the thoughtfulness that goes into data sources is what empowers all of our work. And um, I do think data sources are in some ways, or in most ways, more beautiful than the dashboards can ever be. There's such elegance, art and science. And so we have a fantastic team of experts who will be lending their expertise and sharing best practices, lessons learned. I know I've had a lot of lessons learned, and we all sort of experience similar things. If you want to move the slide forward, we'll show you the agenda. So we are going to cover a few things. There we go. We're going to do a round robin introduction of our panelists, and then we are going to jump into a presentation from Muhammad, who is going to give us an overview of the STAR schema. This is a data warehousing topic, which is fundamental to data source design. And then, of course, our panel discussion on Tableau Data Source. And then, of course, we'll wrap up and let us move on to the introductions. And I'll let folks take over from here in the order here. If Kathy, if you want to kick us off, who you are and where you're from and just a little background.
All right. I'm Kathy Rauscher. I'm from Lincoln, Nebraska. I work for the University of Nebraska Foundation. I'm about to celebrate my 28th anniversary here next month. I started my career in IT and transitioned to reporting and analytics about 10 years ago. And my title now is Senior Director of Business Intelligence. Do a lot of reporting, dashboards, data sources, data warehouse stuff, all of that.
I'm Jake Tolbert. I work at UC Berkeley. I'm the director of analytics there. I've been at UC Berkeley for 5 years now, primarily focused on our data visualization, data, putting together dashboards for fundraisers, for fundraiser activities, metrics, those sorts of things. And before that, I spent about 10 years at a small private doing much the same thing, although because it was so much smaller, I had a finger in all the pots. So it's been a fun transition moving from a very small team where I did all the things to a very large team where there's lots of people who can do all the things and who can do them better than I can. So it's been a great transition, and I'll turn it over to Manny.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Manny Duero, and I'm with UC Berkeley. I've been with Berkeley since 2006, working for advancement. So my team manages our data warehouse and all of the BI tools that we use. We have SAP, Business Objects, Crystal Reports, and of course, Tableau. I develop data sources that we use for our Tableau visits. And I do a little bit of dashboarding on the side. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Heather Campbell. I'm Associate Vice President for Advancement Services at UMass Amherst Foundation. I work with Mohammed Dazer there. I've been at UMass for going on about 5 months, so I'm still relatively new at UMass. However, I was with Princeton University in advancement for about 16 years prior to that. So I'm very familiar with the advancement space, built out the analytics data warehousing function at Princeton University, brought Tableau on back in, I don't know, probably early, maybe 2010 or so. So been using Tableau for quite some time, familiar with building data sources and working in our data warehouse. So yeah, excited to be building out our program at UMass Amherst now. Thank you.
Well, thank you all. I'm happy to be here to set the stage for our panelists. And mainly, I'm gonna bring some history so that it can take us to the future, from now and to the future. But what I propose to do is just like bring some history of how did we get here first, and then the panelists that really know more than I do can take us to what's happening now and what they're looking at in the future. Type star schema, but before we even go to the type star schema, I want to go back to how did we get here. Relational databases started in the 70s, early 70s. So this is 45 years, 50 years kind of technology. And it started with this one research paper from IBM. One keyword there that is I think we all use it every day, but we don't even think about it anymore, is the third normal form. The third normal form is very much what was that paper is about. And that third normal form is how our all relationship database, including data warehouse, by the way, they are relational databases, are designed with. So what is a third normal form? Third normal form is very much what we use every day when we do a join, because the third normal form consists of keeping duplication to the minimum. So the entity will only show up once, and you have to kind of like dedupe to the maximum. But that third normal form was designed and optimized to do what we know as screen now, very much create, read, update, and delete from the application, from the CRM, from the donor database. When we go to reporting, that third normal form doesn't help us much, and we all dealt with that in the past. So what happened is, by late 80s, another group of IBM came up with the concept of data warehousing, but it was back then called decision support system. So now known as BI and then as analytics, they created the architecture for allowing us to pull data for decision support system faster and aggregate and everything we do now with Tableau. So two main school of thought came up from that concept. Bill Emmons is one approach that still continue to support third normal form, and Ralph Campbell is the one that very much the father of the star schema that we want to discuss today. This just to kind of illustrate what the difference between the two. This is a gift tracker in a database for advanced. Actually, this is an advanced database backend, and it show the complexity of third normal form and how we it's designed to optimize updating record, editing, deleting, adding. The concept that we want to start today the conversation with, and then again the panelists will take it to wherever it will go, is that the star schema is supposed to allow us to aggregate data faster and allow us to do the minimum joint. We all write SQL and we all write pages of SQL just to create an output. And the star schema is supposed to help us write the minimum because it's designed to join the tables that constitute the data warehouse. How do we do that? This is an example. The fact table is where all the metrics are, and dimensions are linked to the fact table. So when you're trying to read specific measure, you can slice it and dice it with the dimensions. So that's actually baked in Tableau, and we're going to see that in a minute. But that's the concept of star schema. It's the difference between the third normal form and the star schema is we don't respect less duplication. We create duplication for the purpose of reporting easily. This is an example of the implementation of a gift tracker in a data warehouse with using the star schema. So you can see that the fact table will have all the numbers and the dimension will have everything that you want to filter, the measure that you capture. So usually this is at the granular level. So when you have it at the granular level, you can have hierarchical dimension, and the one that I probably use here is the one at the right side. The bottom of the right side is the country, and you go from country to county to city to state to postal code to region. You go all the way, and you can say how much we raise from United States, by state, by city, by zip code. You can do that in the fly because everything is at the granular level. You can do that also by constituent type, by fund, by the way you design your star schema is very much to answer all the questions you may have, but it's really based on the metrics that you want to report for. So one simple example, I'm going to end with this, because I understand you're not here to listen to me, so you're here for the panelists. So quickly, that implementation of the star schema, you can see it baked in the Tableau implementation from the day one, actually. And now you can see that the dimension always at the top and the metrics in the bottom. And when you create a data source using star schema, it's just all the pieces fall in place without having to worry about anything. And I will, hopefully this work, and end my slides here and turn it to the amazing panel team that we have.
That is fantastic, Mohammed. As we think about the data warehouse, the data sources from which Tableau pulls can be a data warehouse. It can be a transactional system. It could be a spreadsheet. It can be a combination of any of those things. I'd love to start with some basics around, we could do sort of a round robin of where you are with data sources. And if you could layer it with sort of your environment, we'll have folks from across lots of different CRMs, maybe even ones that are using Access Database, etc. So whoever wants to kick us off, a little bit about where you are with data sources and a little background.
I'll start. So in Berkeley, all of our sources of our Tableau data comes from our data warehouse. So we implemented Tableau in 2017, 2018. So at first, our structure behind it is really flat. 2020 comes with a version with relationships, and all has changed. We still have our old structure, but we also have a version that is using relationships. We did relationships because it took away the use of LODs. So it made our dashboarding much faster to render. And right now we're in 2023.3, our version.
The thing that I'll add to what Manny said is that primarily at Berkeley, we have really three big data sets. And Manny, being on the data engineering team, like honestly, I say his team. Let's be honest, it's mostly Manny. Manny's the one that engineers those and builds those. So we have one that's dedicated to giving data, one that's dedicated to sort of entity engagement data, and one that's dedicated for prospect data. And our goal is to use one of those three data sets for all the dashboards that we build, because Manny has solved a bunch of the annoying, complicated, fiddly logic problems, right? Like, you don't have to ask, wait, does this visit count? Like, Manny's already built the logic behind the scenes and there's a flag to say, yes, this visit counts, or no, this visit doesn't count. So you've already got, so we have that all, and we try really hard not to build dashboards with any sort of custom SQL, because I don't want to have to rebuild. I have to go tear Manny's data source apart and figure out what the logic is. and remind myself or dig into the document. Like, I don't want to do that. I just want to push the button and use the data set. And we'll talk some more about this later, but generally we can. For the most part, there's lots of exceptions, but generally most of our dashboards are built on one of those 3 data sets.
Our journey into Tableau is very, very similar. We started in 2019. We had very, very flat data sources with a lot of columns. Worked well. We built a lot of dashboards over them, but it was becoming an issue with our data warehouse refresh. So in the last year, we've started researching relationships, started converting all of our data sources over to relationships and all our dashboards over to those data sources. We created about 20 subject matter views in our data warehouse, and we use those in all of our relationships for all of our data sources. We have quite a few more than 3. I would say we've probably got a dozen, maybe, different data sources, but we try to do the same thing. Anytime we need a report, we try to use those data sources exclusively because they have the business rules baked in, and no one has to think about, whether it counts or doesn't count. Is it a PSM? Is it not? All of that's baked into those data sources. So when you go to build your report, you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm coming from 2 very different environments. When I was at Princeton University for many years, we did have a very well-developed data warehouse based on relational tables. We were working with had a primary data set that was very, very wide, and had all your kind of typical columns that you needed. Typically, I would like to build out sources, dependent on their granularity. If you're working with contact reports, that's a separate data source. If you're working with transactional data, that's a separate data source. Bring them into Tableau, use actions. That's typically how I was working at Princeton. Since I've been at UMass, not as a mature kind of organization where we are at with advancement, but I am starting to work a little more closely with our data engineers to kind of step away from or start building some views that we can pull against in Tableau. Unfortunately, our resources are thin in terms of working hand in hand with the data engineer. So I'm doing a lot of modeling in Tableau Prep. And that's just where we're at right now. And so I'm doing a lot of the unpacking of custom SQL code, doing that in Tableau Prep. And I think eventually, we'll want to move that into the data warehouse.
Heather, can you talk a little? We've talked about using Tableau Prep I don't know, Manny, you can talk about whether or not you've used it or not, but I haven't really spent a lot of time with it. How is it for doing, getting stuff ready? You've got the data warehouse that's kind of okay-ish, but it's not Tableau how's it work? Can you talk about using it?
Sure. Actually, I have it open. I was working on something. Let me just share, because I think having just a visual is helpful. Let's see. Let me pull this up quickly. So this is a visual of Tableau Prep. If you're on the Ellucian Advanced database, you'll notice a lot of the TMS tables. I'm really starting from scratch here. I'm working with the native Ellucian Advanced tables, pulling those in, doing my joins, doing some data cleaning. So it's much easier to navigate doing all these more complex joins in Tableau Prep versus working, in Tableau Desktop. So I do rely on this quite a bit. And then I'm working with student activity here, working with some ethnicity, some race tables. So every time I pull in an advanced table, you also have to pull in TMS table. So this is kind of a complex. You can also do, I have one, I think I have it here. Custom SQL, you can pull in custom SQL. That's not ideal, but I didn't want to pull in my entire giving transaction table. So I'm just doing some custom SQL for that. And then you do aggregations. You can quickly do aggregations in Tableau Prep. And then you send it to output, and it saves it as a hyper file. And then you pick that up in desktop.
Nice.
And I think it's worth calling out I see this with a lot of different things with business intelligence, is there are multiple paths to success. Tableau Prep, SQL, you have data warehouse, you have transactional systems. There is a universal truth that I noted already, that the fewer the data sources you have, the easier it is to manage, the fewer inconsistencies you have. I think we've all experienced lessons learned. No one ever says that when you learn a lesson, it's not painful. It can be very painful, but you pivot and you grow, and you all sort of experience the same things. For those who are starting out and for those who have been in the field for a while, can all of you talk about what lessons you've learned? Some of the things that you're like, oh, I did it this way, never do that again, or it made sense at the time, now I've changed. All those pain points, the more the better. Anything that comes to mind.
I think one for us when we were looking into doing relationships was we started out, we had these big flat tables. So then we were trying to figure out how to break those tables apart into smaller tables and use the relationships that way. And then we were talking about using stored procedures instead, because trying to figure out how to get some of that weight of processing out of our data warehouse and all of that. And then it just really finally occurred to us that we've got all the data in the warehouse. It doesn't necessarily exist in the form we need, but all we really need is a view in the data warehouse to do some of that business rules for us and some of that structuring and those kinds of things. And then we can use those in all of our data sources. If I want constituent data, I know that this is the basic stuff that I always need. So I just have a 20 column tape view that has my constituent data in it that I can use in any data source I want. And so that was kind of a big aha moment for us to figure out that structure.
One thing I'm getting stuck on right now at UMass is we have a table that's constructed just to count our campaign crediting, our campaign numbers. And once you build out this there's a ton of custom SQL behind this table, a lot of the counting rules and everything. Once you get yourself stuck in a table, it's really hard to expand on that table, to build around it. So now I want to capture commitments and receipts that exist out of our campaign counting and crediting. But it's really hard to, work within that one table and then build on top of it. So I almost like to start, let's start with the full transactional data set and apply a campaign flag or something to that effect, rather than building kind of a complex table that you're stuck in.
Yeah, to that point, Heather, because we're the central fundraising team, and we do a lot of work. Like, we want our tools to be used by everybody on campus, and so we have to have all these filters, right? Like, the law school wants to filter down to just their giving, and letters and science wants to see only their giving, and business, so and the only way to do that is that that's not true. Either we could calculate a bajillion totals for every single possible permutation, or we can have it, like you said, at the transactional level, and then a column for, well, this gift went to business, this gift went to law, or and within that, not just the law to the dean of the law school, and it'll be used in the I just can't imagine. That's really been a struggle for us. How do we provide the filtering that we want while still keeping the row limit to the size of the data to a reasonable size, right? We could pull in all 5 million transaction rows and then a bajillion columns. How do we get there? It's been challenging, and I think trying to figure out where the balance is between those two pieces. Like those are two competing, priorities, and trying to find the right balance has been really hard. It's been really tough for us.
Yeah, I think you have the balance of performance and feature set, theoretical versus in practice. And customers are your customers, your colleagues expect performant dashboards. And once you start getting into the millions of rows, the tens of millions of rows, it could be 60, 70 million, then the theoretical has to go through a point of refinement. We have a question which leads us sort of to our next section. To be or not to be. This really hits it right on the head, and it's from Nathan. And feel free to come off mute, or I can just read it. All right. How do y'all determine when someone should be? Oh, no problem. How do you determine when something should be a data source versus pushing the transformations upstream into the data warehouse?
I think in our case, where we ended up was, we know that our data warehouse is not great, and we know that it needs to be redeveloped and structured, but we don't have the bandwidth to do that right now. And so that's kind of why we decided to do it in our views and our data sources, more so than going back and restructuring our data warehouse. And it gives us a little bit more control over what we're doing.
The other, for me, the question is, do I need relationships or not? Like, do I need a one-to-many join? Like, if you're just going to use a flat file, like, yeah, you can just push it in as a Tableau. You can push right up your, like Kathy was saying, right up a view, build a view in your data warehouse that's just whatever the thing is, or build a procedure that just generates the thing. But every so often I need a list of entities, and then I want all the different record types that they, like what are all the different ways that this person is associated with the university. Because I want to filter on, sometimes I want to filter on just alumni, but sometimes I want to get alumni and parents, or I just want to get, if I want that one-to-many solution, like you could do it as columns, but it sucks. Like, don't do that. Just pull in relation, you have two tables. You got your entities and you got your relationships, your relationships with the university as another table, and join them on your entity ID. Like, you've got that, and you can't do that. You can have two tables in the data warehouse, and in fact, you probably do have those data in the data warehouse, but if you publish it as a data source, then that join is already made for you, and you don't have to go through every time and be like, okay, yeah, I for sure want to join the relationships to the entities on entity ID. Of course I want to do that, and of course I want to do this, and of course I want to do that. Like, that to me is the sell of publishing it as a data source, is that you've got all that sort of basic homework that you're going to do every single time is already done for you.
I think when you think about the decision tree, right, of taking a step back, even from that question, we can kind of go back to socializing. What is the process by which you decide whether you need a new column, a new data source, a new relationship? So someone comes up with a question, right? What are the questions you ask of the person who wants it? So you are building the data source. What questions are you asking them? They have a business need. I want to be able to filter by any record type. And I also want to display any record. I want to show all the record types together when they download the data. Those are examples of questions. So take us through your thoughts. What rolls through your head? Because it's really fundamentally to be or not to be a data source, right?
So for me, when I build a data source, I think of how if I need to put it into our big data source and add some columns or add some rows to it. But as you said, universal data sets tend to be big because it answers most of the questions that we want our users to be, the users want to answer. But sometimes it takes long to refresh the data set when it gets to be so big. I might think of it as making another data source to make it faster and not make the big one refresh slower. I take that into consideration, the refresh time.
We're struggling with that a little bit right now in rewriting because we have existing dashboards that we have to fit the new data sources into those existing dashboards. And I'm struggling with that right now when I get to a point with a dashboard using a specific data source, find that there is a column or a piece of information that's missing. And then it's that decision of, do I just add that piece as another relationship here? Is that getting too big? Should I be breaking those all out into something different? I have one I just counted here before we got online. I have one of my data sources has like 30 different tables in there with relationships. And it's like, is that a right thing to do? I don't know. It seems to process okay, but I don't know if that's the right thing to do or not.
Having been down that road, Kathy, it's not. Well, let me show you real quick. I'm going to share my screen. This is our main prospect data source. This is the sort of the root table, and then it has all these. This is a disaster. Like architecturally, it's awesome. Like it does all the things. It like we have everything is in here. You can. There's not a question you can't answer with this data source. But because it's so big and there are so many tables, like even when you filter down and you just get a really narrow extract, Tableau still has to churn through all of those different tables and figure out the logic between all of those different tables to make all the joins. Even if there's no rows in the table, it still makes all the joins. And it ends up being really slow. And so we're really struggling right now because we're trying to get rid of some of our old data sources and move to this data source, but this data source is really slow because we don't have as many LODs in our dashboards, but because there's so many joins. So we're trying to figure out what our next step is and what our next strategy is.
So is it slow for the refresh? Is it slow for design? Is it slow for the user?
The latter two. It's not so bad on the refresh. I don't know. I mean, do you have a sense of how many rows are in that?
The refresh is not that bad, about 10 minutes.
Okay.
But the rendering of the dashboard, kind of slow.
It's slow, and it's slow in Tableau Desktop because every time you drop a field, it's like, wait a second, what else is this join? Hold on, let me look at it. So, I mean, it's great because I don't have to think about any of the regular sort of design problems, and data design problems. I mean, like I don't have to think about, wait, am I missing something else? Like that Manny solved all those problems for me. But I do have to, there's a lot of churning. So we're trying to solve exactly the problem that you're talking about, which is like, how do I break this up into really light, efficient ways so we get all the benefits of relationships without overloading, dumping so much stuff on top of ourselves.
I definitely had the same view where and for those who don't know relationships, not everyone on the call may be familiar with relationships. Anyone want to talk about what a relationship is?
I guess we don't.
Okay, I will jump in then. You know what?
I'm kidding. I'm just kidding.
I will go on mute. Hit it, Kathy.
Well, I don't know if I can explain it. My team probably is going, oh, please don't have her explain it, because I tried to explain it to them. Basically, relationships in Tableau, let Tableau take care of the joining for you. And it works much better than blends and those kinds of things, because Tableau knows and controls the granularity of each of those relationship tables. And so you don't have to worry about a lot of duplication. Like if you do a join from a constituent to a revenue, you're going to get all the constituent data on each of the revenue rows. And so it gets complex. Whereas with relationships, you have that one constituent and Tableau knows how many rows or whatever that it needs. That was probably a terrible explanation.
No, it was very good. It's
So
dynamic.
please
It's
jump in with
dynamic
more.
joining. No, it's dynamic. It's wonderful. It's dynamic joining, and only when you need it will it do the join in real time.
It's a really succinct way to put it, Ron. I think only when you need it, I think is the, or rather, only when you ask for it.
Right, and we're talking about performance. Hiding all of the unused data sometimes improves performance or something like that, because any join that you use, if you reference one of the tables that are available, it does that join in the background, and if you can avoid it, all the better.
I have a question. Maybe this is for Manny. I'm wondering, when you make the call, when you have a really complex Tableau data source like the prospect data, when do you make the call to push that into your data warehouse as a view, or is that something you?
Since we built our data warehouse to answer most of the questions, it's not just our data warehouse. It's not just for Tableau, but for all of our other BI tools. So it's kind of built in there. For Tableau, I just build views on top of our tables so that it can fit into, so that I can use relationships to be able to use relationships. But most of our logic is back in Tableau, in data warehouse, that I don't want to recreate it in Tableau.
One of the best examples for that is annual giving segments, retention, things like that. You can find plenty of suggestions on the forums of how to do things. Sometimes just because you can, you shouldn't. Those complex business rules that then take LODs and all these different things and don't persist. I mean, that's a big piece, that persistence and set and forget. So once you have it in there, you don't want all those transformations in real time on a Tableau dashboard. I think that was a lesson learned of what not to do for me. So we have some more questions. Are there ways to socialize? Okay, so this next question, this is a continuation of what Nathan started. So when things change in the data warehouse, or they change in Tableau prep, or they change in any of your data sources, are there ways to socialize pushing the changes upstream? Oh, I think you're on mute, Kathy.
There we go. I'm not sure I understand what he's asking.
I'm interpreting it as, you add a new column, you add a change to how something is computed. Data sources are living. And I think almost nearly daily, for at least in our organization, several times a week, there are adjustments to include or not to include and refine. And then those changes impact all dashboards and all dashboards that rely on what is your process for sharing that information to evaluate the impact, because it's not always clear which dashboards are using data sources other than the data source is being used, but a certain calculated field, for example. Let's say a calculated field goes away, right? That could kill a dashboard, for example.
I mean, we're a very small team at this point in time, so for us, we have weekly meetings, so, you know, it's basically socialized there. We don't have anyone outside of our team who's doing Tableau, so for us, it's not a huge issue at this point in time, but it could become one.
I mean, we certainly struggle with that because it's a big, complex organization, and you know, you change one thing, and you're like, oh, that's right, so and so uses that, and I didn't even think about it until after they sent me an angry email. We're really lucky that our prospect development team does most of the, like, they have their fingers in most of our tools most often, and they're interfacing with the frontline fundraiser staff the most. And so we've been really careful to build great relationships with those folks, and to keep them in the loop as much as possible. Honestly, that's our best strategy is just to build good relationships with the people, with your power users, so that when you know you've got to change something, you can email so and so, and you know that they're going to tell their team, and then that team's going to tell the people, their clients. We, on the flip side, there are a few dashboards that don't have a single user or single team, that everybody uses it, and we're oh my gosh, we're just super duper cautious when we're adjusting the logic that builds the campaign total. It's got to go through a lot of, I'm gonna make the change, and then I'm gonna show it to Tam, my boss, and then Tam's gonna show it to her boss, and then she's gonna show it to the 3 people that are involved in the campaign team, and then they're gonna show it to their, it's going to go through a bunch of changes and approvals, so that everybody's ready on Friday morning or Monday morning when the new total comes in and it's gone down by $10, so that everybody knows what's happening. Like, we all know what's going on. So I don't know. I guess I've rambled a long ways to say that communication is just is really, really key, and having that sort of open communication with your users about the fact that we've got to make this logical change to support this other thing is really going to be important.
Yeah, you really hit on some important points. Second set of eyes. If you adjust a data source, make sure someone looks at it as well, and maybe some release notes or something like that, so you can prepare others for those changes. Maybe it's we do like a weekly notification to folks who may be using the data sources. There's a question from Karen, which is a great one. When is it appropriate to use the custom SQL option? So from Tableau Desktop, you can do custom SQL and connect directly to a view, versus using you can connect within relationships, you can connect there, or you can connect to a Tableau data source that sits on the server. When is it appropriate to use a custom SQL option? Or ever?
I have to admit that I'm finding myself doing it often because I'm in a very young shop right now, and it's just how you get things done. I think it's not ideal, but I think in order to, if you don't have data warehouse to rely on, and there's just some cases where it's just too complex of a join, or several joins to use relationships. You know, I do go that route. So it's like a dirty little secret, I guess. But you know, it is something that I do rely on.
And there's a piece that some people don't have access to create views in the data warehouse. So they get around it by executing SQL in real time.
Yeah, I don't think it should be. I don't think, Heather, you should think of it as a dirty little secret. I think it's like, I think it's what most developers ought to like. When if you don't have Manny, like, or somebody in that role to like really be an expert on data architecture, like how else are you going to do it?
Mhm.
You know, like sometimes there's just not a choice. Like you don't have a, like, you're like, well, I don't have a data source that does this very weird thing that the endowment reporting team wants. Like, all right, well, I know there's a table that does that, and I just need to join it to these three other tables to get the thing that I want. Like, knock it out. Do your job.
I would say the same thing for Tableau Prep. Again, I'm finding myself relying on that because we don't have a data warehouse and we're a young shop. You know, and I think it's a good place to start for an analyst to build out a data model. You know, all of these things eventually you want to start pushing into your data warehouse or having, you know, a very strong Tableau model built. But I think when you're just kind of starting out, I think it's a good place to go.
I mean, we've used custom SQL for a few reports. We don't have a ton of them, but there are just times when you need to build a dashboard for a specific purpose. It's very unique. It's a very one-off kind of thing. And so using custom SQL is just the best way to do it. You know, it's not going to be something that's ever going to be reused on another report, whatever it is. So we do publish that still as an extract. So we take advantage of that that speed and efficiency, but it's just, there are times when you need to do it.
We received a couple of questions. I think this one's for you, Heather. You're just starting out. We have folks who may not know SQL. Tell us more about your journey through Tableau Prep. What lessons have you learned? What do you like about it? How is it helpful for those who maybe not know SQL? How do they get started? Anything that comes to mind around jumping into prep?
Sure. I think I like Prep because it's such a visual tool. So you can really visualize your joins and you can do a lot of data cleanup. You can do a lot of aggregation, and you know, you don't have to be a SQL expert. You just have to have a basic understanding of joins. I think the thing to be aware of with Tableau Prep is that you have to have a creator license it comes with the creator license. So if you're on Tableau Cloud, it comes with that creator license. But in order to publish and refresh your flows on a schedule, you do have to have some kind of data management add-on. That's an additional, you know, it's not super expensive, but it is an additional cost to be able to schedule your flows to run to refresh your extracts.
Do you know if that's specific to cloud with Tableau Prep? Because we're not using cloud, and I just was curious.
I don't know. I know it's only available. I think it's an additional add-on for the on-prem service or on-prem server license.
So you can do everything but conduct. So a great way to get started, the way I got started, to share what that is, I had two data sets and I wanted to see where the missing record was. It's a really easy way for those who use Access to do joins and be like, why is this missing? It's a gentle way. Did you self-learn, Heather? Did you use kind of videos? Like where would you get started if you just want to download it?
I'm sure there's a ton of videos available. Absolutely. Tableau is a great, you know, kind of onboarding videos, but I think I self-taught. It's pretty easy to explore. Yeah.
We haven't done anything with profiles or anything, but I did use it to transform an Excel that we get from a vendor. and we needed to split some rows and do a bunch of different things to produce the output the way that we need it for our system. And I used it for that. So it went from Excel and formatted out back into Excel, and it worked great.
All right, we have another question. Is Tableau prep performant for you? We often spend a lot of time waiting for the prep to respond.
I agree. It does. It almost doesn't even seem to be dependent on the data size. I end up shutting it down and restarting it more often than I should say. But it's not always performant, and I'm not sure what the issue is.
Yeah, I do think with performance in general, it's not always easy to detect where things go wrong. It does take a long time. I know that's something I think they are addressing, sort of the loading of Tableau prep, which can take a good amount of time. Maybe that's one disadvantage, maybe over SQL, but SQL is its own thing. For those who want to, so Tableau prep is a great tool that is used all across our industry. For those who want to learn SQL, Manny, do you have any suggestions of how to get started?
Not sure, because I learned SQL at work, but we have Oracle database running for our SQL, but I don't know where to start with SQL.
Let's see.
I did. I mean, in days of yore, I did the Stanford multi-online, the MOOC course for SQL, and it changed my life. Like they've changed it. Originally, it had a whole bunch of like weird XML and relational algebra pieces in it that weren't very helpful. So you could now they've like broken it up, and you can like pick and choose the bits that you want. I feel bad recommending something from Stanford, being a Berkeley person, but you should just go sign up for the MOOC. It's free. Just go do it, because if you want to get into SQL, it will, like, it's hard. Like I had a hard time working my way through it, but the reason it was hard was because I was learning a ton. So
yeah, that's
make
fantastic.
that.
Don't be intimidated. It's practice, 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 practice. We have some wonderful, Colin, thank you for joining us. We have some suggestions in the chat. LeetCode.com, study plan, top SQL. When I learned there was an interactive, I'm sure it's still out there. It's like MySQL tutorial, and it gives you questions and you learn all the different pieces of it. We have something from Maureen. Thank you for that. Awesome. There's plenty of stuff out there. I think we have time. I think we're gonna get a couple more questions, and if we can, we have something. Oh, this is going a little wonky on me. When designing Tableau data sources, okay. This is a similar theme here. How do you strike the right balance between maintaining enough detail for meaningful insights and ensuring optimal performance? What trade-offs have you encountered? Trade-offs. That's a good one. And how do you determine the ideal level of detail to achieve both usability and efficiency? It's probably more on so far Jake and Manny and Kathy as well, right?
Yeah, if you are going to add millions and millions and millions of rows to a data set that you already have, I would build a separate data set out of that. Email clicks is an example. There's millions and millions of. We didn't want to add that to our entity data set. Appeals is another one. There's millions and millions of rows of appeals, so we didn't want to add that to our regular, let's just say, regular data source that we built. Just for refresh time, because that will take time.
It does. And Tableau doesn't allow for the incremental refresh with relationships. So that is a downside of using relationships, which is
you can do incremental, but for only one table.
right.
But since we love relationships, there's so many tables.
Yes, it is a feature request that's out there. So, anyone else want to share their thoughts?
We actually are not doing any summary of data in our data sources at this point in time. We're all at detail level. So
The one point where we often have to is if we want to do string concatenation, if somebody wants like a list of all the fundraisers that are assigned to a single solicitation plan or proposal, like you can kind of do that. You can kind of do string concatenation in Tableau, but then you got to build like a table calc and jump through a bunch of hoops and then filter it. Like it's worth if you're going to do those kinds of things, like it's worth pushing that farther up the chain and not doing it. And when or if you have an LOD that you're using on every single visualization, like ask yourself, can I push this up the chain? Can I push this up into the data set so that I can filter on it up here, in the data and just have a single value, regular value filter rather than having like doing it at the very fine grained detail level.
And really the reality of what you're talking about is that performance hit. You may not know or anticipate until you experience it. I used table calculations for a footer that showed all the different filter values that were used. And I didn't know until I removed one element at a time that was the reason it was taking 10 seconds to perform. So I think sometimes it's just sort of lesson learned. Then you need to just kind of remove it. But that you're going back to kind of updating the data source as opposed to doing it in real time.
So I have a question about that. So what about using the LODs or creating those calculated fields in the data source before you publish the extract? What's your experience with that? We've struggled with whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, or should it go back into the data warehouse or?
LODs, Manny, do you want to take this one?
LOD is kind of runtime. You cannot build it inside your data source, but LOD is also kind of like a window function in your.
Oh, that's true. LOD, you're right. LODs, I can't do that. But calculated fields, yeah.
Yeah, but if you want to do some sort of LOD inside your data source, you may want to push it out into your data warehouse and kind of write some sort of window function that does the same thing.
What about the calculated fields? Do you do that in your data source?
We do some calculated fields in our data source, but it tends to be a runtime too. It's not materialized in your data set, in your data. It's not a real field. It's kind of calculated on the fly.
Okay.
Yeah. So that if you have a context filter, for example, it'll filter out the data first. Like that's where we use those. Is if there's something, a calculation that needs to happen, the logic needs to exist, but you're going to do a filter, you're going to let the user filter on something, and then you want to calculate it. I think you're right, Kathy. They're not great, but they're worse than they're better than trying to dig up what's that logic. Where did I save that code?
Yeah.
I don't know. I gotta go find it. It's better than that. So
that's a great question. It's a great balance. I think the today function is similar to that. Those are temporal. Those things are run in real time and they're row by row. You could materialize that as just a field. These are great questions. Happy to, this is fantastic. People want to ask more questions in our LinkedIn, let me share my screen. Our LinkedIn page, our group. This has been a robust conversation. There's so much experience and lessons learned and where to get started and many avenues but similar challenges. And I want to thank everyone, all our panelists. Thank you, Jesse, Jake and Kathy and Heather and Manny, brilliant folks. I've had the pleasure of working with you all. I know how sophisticated your environments are, and how talented you are, really the best of the best. And so thanks so much for joining us. We will have a new session coming up in a few months. And thank you again for joining us. I hope you learned, and appreciate your time, everyone, and especially our panelists lending their expertise. Have a great one.
Thank you.
Thank you.